welcome to your deep dive. We've got quite the reading list on trauma this time around. Everything from the physical and psychological impacts to all these cutting-edge therapies.
It
So
is a lot to unpack.
it is. So buckle up because we're going to explore how your brain, your body, how it all kind of holds onto trauma, and then those amazing ways that you can heal and find that, inner peace.
It's true. Trauma can feel like this, insurmountable thing,
Yeah.
But the potential for healing, it really is huge.
So let's unpack all that.
Let's do it. Let's dive into the science behind it all and all the tools that, honestly, we all have at our disposal.
Okay, let's unpack this. First things first. What is trauma, really? I
Yeah.
feel like there's this misconception, that it's only these big T events, but our sources, they paint a different picture.
Exactly. Trauma is less about the event itself and way more about your nervous system's response to it. You know what I mean? It's about feeling overwhelmed and unsafe. Whether that's like a single event, something shocking that happened, or even just this ongoing chronic stress, those can both be traumatic.
So if trauma is less about what actually happened, like the event itself, and more about our body's reaction, what's actually happening like inside our brains and our bodies
Right.
when we experience something traumatic.
Okay, so imagine this.
Yeah.
You're a kid, right? And something upsetting happens.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of your parents, your caregivers, whoever, providing this safe space for you to process all those big emotions, they try to distract you.
I see.
Or they tell you to, look on the bright side,
Yeah.
And that unmet need, that need for safety and for someone to validate what you're going through, that can get trapped in your body.
Wow.
It's literally like your nervous system hits the record button on those feelings. The fear, the helplessness, the anger, all of it. And they get lodged in your cells,
And those recordings can really mess with us.
Oh, absolutely.
One of our sources mentioned really struggling with anxiety, like their nervous system was just stuck in overdrive, always trying to outrun those trapped feelings.
It's exhausting.
And then another source talked about turning to things like work, even exercise, as a way to avoid actually feeling those deeper emotions.
Precisely. And those are such classic examples of what we call emotional defenses. It's how we unconsciously avoid really confronting those painful memories,
So we're talking about numbing, distractions, blame, really anything to keep those feelings at bay.
Exactly. Anything to not have to deal.
It's so interesting, these emotional defenses. We've got to dig into these a little bit more because it feels like understanding them is such a crucial step in actually processing any kind of trauma.
Huge. Yeah.
And one of our sources broke down 6 common types.
Okay.
Can you walk us through those?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got avoidance, first of all, just steering clear of anything that might trigger those painful memories. Then there's distraction, just keeping ourselves busy to avoid feeling anything at all.
Oh, yeah.
Then there's submission, and that's where we convince ourselves we deserve bad things or that we're powerless to change anything.
Wow. Yeah.
Then you've got the opposite, control.
Oh, interesting.
Trying to micromanage every aspect of our lives to feel safe, right?
Oh, I see.
And then there's state changing, using things like substances, maybe even just throwing ourselves into work to just shift our emotional state, whatever it takes, to not feel what's really going on.
Just change it, yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then lastly, dissociation.
Oh, okay.
Mentally checking out, feeling disconnected from reality.
These are sneaky.
They are, right. We're often doing them without even realizing it.
I know, and I'm sitting here thinking I've definitely used exercise as a way to just not deal.
No, of course, it's so common.
To avoid dealing with some tough emotions.
It makes us feel good, like we're doing something positive.
Yeah.
But like we were saying, these are temporary fixes.
Right.
To truly heal, we've got to go deeper, address that root of the problem. That feeling of being unsafe, that feeling that's stuck in our bodies.
So how do we move beyond those defenses, especially when they've maybe been with us for so long?
Yeah.
What's the first step to even beginning to rewire our brain, our bodies, to allow for healing?
Creating safety.
Okay.
If your nervous system is just stuck in that fight or flight mode all the time,
Right.
It's going to be so hard to access those deeper emotions and begin to heal.
Right.
It's like trying to have a rational conversation in the middle of a hurricane,
Oh, wow.
Your body's just not in a place to listen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So how do we create that sense of safety, especially if, like one of our sources mentioned, our childhood, it didn't provide that secure base?
Right. And it's not about erasing the past or pretending it didn't happen. It's about rewiring those pathways in your brain, showing your nervous system that it's safe to come out of hiding.
I like that, come out of hiding.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier this idea of rewiring neural pathways. Can you explain that a bit more? What does that actually look like in the brain?
Okay, so think of it like a well-worn path in a forest.
Okay.
Every time you have like a similar traumatic response, it's like walking down that same path, And every time you do it, it gets a little bit deeper and deeper.
Right.
But with therapy, with new coping skills and mechanisms, you can start to create new paths, healthier paths, And it takes time, it takes work, but eventually those new paths, they get stronger. And the old ones, those fear-based ones, they start to fade.
So we're not talking about like overnight transformations, but rather like a gradual process.
Yeah.
Creating new patterns, new ways of like responding to the world around us.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So where do we start with this whole like rewiring process? What are some of those tools that can help us create a sense of safety within ourselves?
Well, a few of our sources talk about things like, yoga and meditation.
Yeah.
And they're not just about relaxing, although,
That's always nice.
yeah, it's a good bonus, right?
Yeah.
But they're more about building a different relationship with, like, our inner world,
Like learning to self-regulate, like you were saying, so we can actually approach those emotions, those trapped emotions, without being totally overwhelmed.
Exactly, yeah. It's like hitting the reset button on that like, internal alarm system we all have going on.
Oh, like that.
And as we start to become more aware of what's happening inside, like our thoughts, those sensations, even just our emotions as they're happening, we can start to like create a space around them.
Instead of feeling trapped by them.
Totally. We can just observe them without like judging them, And we learn to just let them come and go without getting like swept away.
So we're not trying to suppress those emotions or like avoid them completely anymore. We're trying to create a space to actually feel them.
Yes. Exactly.
Oh.
It's about changing the relationship we have with our inner world,
Yeah.
More curiosity, more compassion, way less fear, and like way less judgment.
This makes me think about one of the sources who uses like theater and movement
Oh,
as a
interesting.
way to help people process trauma.
Wow.
And they talked about how embodying different roles can help you like feel your body differently and expand your range of emotional expression.
That's so powerful, It's like creative expression can be so healing.
Yeah.
It lets us tap into those parts of ourselves, explore new ways of just like being in the world and even release some of those trapped emotions through movement and sound.
I love that. So we've got yoga, meditation, creative expression. What about like more targeted therapies? Because our sources mentioned some really interesting ones like EMDR and neurofeedback.
Yeah, those are great. And they offer like a more direct approach, to rewiring the brain and processing those traumatic memories.
Okay.
EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing,
It's a mouthful.
it is a mouthful, yeah, and it can sound a little out there at first.
It kind of did to me. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Having someone like wiggle their fingers in front of your face while you're
Yeah.
thinking about something traumatic, just,
Yeah, it sounds a little too simple, right?
yeah.
But more and more research is coming out that says, like, it can be really effective.
Interesting.
It seems like that bilateral stimulation, like the eye movements, it helps your brain process and actually integrate those fragmented memories.
So it's almost like taking those shattered pieces and putting them back together in a way that makes more sense.
Exactly. It helps you create a more coherent, a more manageable, like, narrative, out of those experiences.
So it's almost like EMDR is helping our brains catch up on some much needed like emotional processing.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. And then there's neurofeedback,
Oh,
which is kind of like taking your brain to the gym.
Okay, you're speaking my language now
Right.
with these metaphors.
I'm trying.
So with neurofeedback, we're talking about like literally flexing those neural pathways or...
Pretty much, yeah. So they put these sensors on your scalp,
Okay.
and they measure your brainwave activity.
Interesting.
And then you get this real-time feedback, often through like visuals or sounds.
Oh, wow.
That helps you train your brain to regulate itself more effectively.
So if you're someone who struggles with like anxiety, for example, neurofeedback could help you train your brain to shift into a calmer state.
Exactly. It's like you're learning to consciously control those unconscious patterns that might be like contributing to all those symptoms you're experiencing.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. It's really cool stuff.
Okay, I have to admit, some of these therapies sound incredibly promising.
Yeah.
But there's one in particular I'm both fascinated by and a little apprehensive about, and that's psychedelics, MDMA specifically.
It's understandable to feel that way, because they do have a history and they can be controversial.
Yeah.
But there's more and more research coming out that says that MDMA, when it's used in a controlled setting, like a therapeutic setting,
Right.
could be really powerful for healing from trauma.
What makes MDMA so potentially effective in that context?
So one of our sources, Dr. Van der Kolk, who's done a lot of research in this area, he describes it as like a way to revisit those painful memories, but with a sense of compassion for yourself,
Oh, wow.
which can be really hard for people who've experienced trauma.
It makes sense, though, because
Yeah.
trauma can really, really do a number on self-compassion.
Absolutely. And MDMA seems to create this unique chemical environment in the brain that lets people access and process those memories without being totally overwhelmed by fear or shame.
Like they can finally let their guard down a little?
Yeah. It's like it turns down the volume on that fear center of the brain, that amygdala, and at the same time, it kind of like amplifies feelings of empathy and
Right.
connection.
So it's almost like MDMA is giving people the space to approach those memories with a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
One that allows for more self-compassion, more understanding.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's like it lowers those defenses, at least temporarily,
Right.
and it creates this window where you can experience some deep inner healing and transformation.
It's incredible.
It really is.
But this is not a quick fix, right?
No.
This is not just a magic bullet.
It's a powerful tool, and it needs to be treated with respect, and it needs to be used with the guidance of like trained professionals, for
Yeah.
sure.
Of course. Okay, so we've got all these different options. Yoga, meditation, therapy, even psychedelics. Where does someone even begin?
That's a great question.
It feels like it could be kind of overwhelming, especially if you're already struggling.
Totally. And there's no one right answer. There's no one size fits all approach.
Right.
But the most important thing is to approach it all with curiosity, with compassion for yourself, and a willingness to experiment to see what works for you.
So it's about finding what resonates with you, your nervous system, your experiences.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There will be ups and downs, and that's totally okay.
All part of the process.
Exactly. And it's like one of the sources said, healing from trauma, it's an experiment.
Oh, I like that.
You have to be open to trying new things, to figure out what helps you feel more present, more connected to yourself and the world around you.
It takes the pressure off too, right?
Oh.
This whole idea of it being an experiment, you don't have to have all the answers right away.
Yeah, there's no pressure to get it right, you
Yeah.
know? It allows for that gentle exploration.
Speaking of gentle, one of the sources talked about the importance of not pushing too hard too fast
Yeah, for sure.
when it comes to processing trauma.
It's so important.
And they used this metaphor, which I thought was really interesting, of like being trapped behind these prison walls.
Oh, wow.
And to break free, you got to go slowly, carefully.
You got to build that foundation of safety first.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you risk feeling like you're going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a delicate balance,
Yeah.
between wanting to heal quickly, like get it over with,
Right.
and honoring that pace that your nervous system needs.
Like wanting to sprint to the finish line, but your body's telling you to like slow down.
Yes.
Take it easy.
It's those baby steps that often take the most courage.
I love that.
Yeah.
It makes me think about there was that one source that talked about the resilience study with the mice.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And they were saying how, those mice that were considered resilient, it wasn't that they were like fearless.
Right.
They were resilient because they could tell the difference between an actual threat
Mm-hmm.
and something that was safe.
Right. They could read the situation.
And they responded in a way that made sense for that situation.
It's about like having the ability to respond skillfully, not just reacting out of fear all the time.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
It's not about never experiencing stress or trauma again, but about, having the capacity to move through those challenges in a way that's more like aware and skillful.
And that might look different for everyone.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? For some people, it might be therapy, it might be yoga and meditation.
Mm-hmm.
For others, it might be like creative expression, even just connecting with people who get it, who've been through something similar.
Yes. That connection can be so healing, Just feeling seen and understood.
But like in that one source where those parents, they had lost their sons and they they found some peace in starting a foundation to like
Yeah.
prevent violence.
Yeah, yeah.
And it wasn't about taking away their pain, but it gave them an outlet, you know.
It gave them purpose.
Yeah, to channel their grief into something meaningful.
It's amazing how even when like the worst possible thing has happened, like there's still that capacity for growth, for healing, for
Yeah.
connection.
That's so powerful.
It is. It's really inspiring. And often that connection comes from like helping others who are going through the same thing.
It's like they say, sometimes the best way to heal is to help others heal.
So true.
And even those things that we do to help other people,
Mm.
whether it's like practicing kindness or gratitude or compassion,
Mm.
it ends up benefiting us too.
Absolutely. It's like this beautiful cycle of
Mhm.
healing, of connection, of giving back.
So as we're kind of wrapping up our deep dive here on trauma and healing, there's this one question I keep coming back to, and that's, if our brains are always changing, if we can rewire those neural pathways, like, does that mean that we have the power to change our relationship with trauma even years later?
We absolutely do.
Wow.
It is never too late to heal. And with the right tools, the right support, and a whole lot of self-compassion, we can rewrite our stories. We can create those new pathways, and we can step into a future that's filled with more peace, more purpose, more well-being.
I love it. It's so empowering
It is empowering.
to think that we're not like defined by those past experiences, but rather by the choices we're making right now.
Yes. It's about taking our power back.
And sometimes the bravest choice we can make is to like finally face those demons, face those recordings from the past, and just like, thank you. I hear you. You were trying to protect me, but I'm ready to let go now.
That's beautifully said. Really beautifully said.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
And as you continue on your own journey of healing, of transformation,
Mm-hmm.
remember to be kind to yourself. Celebrate the little victories, and never, ever underestimate just how amazing your brain and your body are, that capacity to heal, to thrive.
Yes. Yes to all of that.
This has been incredible.
It has.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you for having me. I always love these conversations.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
We hope that it's given you some valuable things to think about.
Some new tools to try out.
Yes, some new tools to experiment with,
Zach.
a renewed sense of hope.
Yes.
Healing is possible, and you are not alone.
You are not alone.
Until next time.
See you next time.